Welcome to the Moon and Gemini podcast. I'm your witch in residence, April Edwards. This is our deep dive, the place where we slow down and explore deeper layers of astrology, the place where symbolism becomes myth and the myth becomes a way of understanding ourselves. Today we are entering one of the most mysterious corners of astrological symbolism, dark moon Lilith. It is not the Lilith most people are familiar with. It is not the commonly used black moon Lilith. It is not the asteroid Lilith either. Dark moon Lilith is stranger than both. It is the ghost in the chart. A point that may not physically exist in the sky, yet has continued to haunt astrology for over a century. To understand it, we have to begin with a strange astronomical story. In the late 19th century, a German astronomer named George Voltimath, apologies if I didn't pronounce that correctly, George claimed he had discovered something extraordinary. He believed Earth had a second moon, but this moon was different from the one we see in the sky. According to Voltimath, his satellite was dark, almost invisible, and only occasionally detectable under very specific observational conditions. He described it as a shadow moon orbiting the Earth. The astronomical community quickly challenged his claims. Subsequent observations failed to confirm the existence of the second satellite. Eventually, most scientists concluded that the sightings were likely caused by optical distortions, telescopic smudges, or atmospheric effects. In other words, the object probably never existed. But the idea had already escaped into astrological imagination. And astrologers, who often work with symbolism as much as physical bodies, began exploring what such a phantom moon might represent. In astrology, dark moon Lilith is considered a mythic or symbolic point, rather than a physical object. It is sometimes referred to as the phantom moon. While the moon represents instinct, emotion, and the maternal field of life, dark moon Lilith represents something much deeper and less visible. It is associated with the most primitive, unconscious layer of the psyche, the parts of ourselves that feel exiled, hidden fears, psychic sensitivity, deep emotional wounds that may not easily find language. In some interpretations, dark moon Lilith reveals how a person responds to betrayal, rejection, or abandonment. It can show where feelings of injustice linger in the psyche, not necessarily in obvious ways, but as something that quietly shapes behavior beneath the surface. Where the moon reflects our emotional life, dark moon Lilith reflects the emotional ghosts we carry. To understand dark moon Lilith fully, we also need to understand the mythic figure of Lilith herself. In ancient mythology, specifically Jewish folklore, Lilith is sometimes described as Adam's first wife. According to the story, she refused to submit to him. Rather than remain in a position of subordination, she left the Garden of Eden entirely. Because of this refusal, she was cast out and transformed into a demonized figure. But many modern interpretations view Lilith differently. Rather than a demon, she has become the archetype of exile, autonomy, and untamed feminine power. She represents the part of the psyche that refuses to be controlled, the part that chooses exile rather than submission. In astrology, this archetype appears in multiple forms. Many astrologers speak about Lilith as a three-part archetype, sometimes called the Lilith trifecta. Each form reflects a different layer of the Lilith myth. Asteroid Lilith is a physical celestial body. It represents rebellion expressed outwardly. This is the part of Lilith that takes action, the one who refuses rules, challenges authority, and openly asserts autonomy. If black moon Lilith is the shadow and dark moon Lilith is the ghost, asteroid Lilith is the body in motion. It shows where someone may actively resist control. Black moon Lilith is the most widely used Lilith point in astrology. It is not a physical object either, but a mathematical point. Specifically, it represents the lunar apogee, the place where the moon's orbit is farthest from the Earth. Symbolically, it represents the shadow self, repressed desires, instincts that society has taught us to hide. Black Moon Lilith shows where we may feel intense hunger for freedom or authenticity, but where we may also struggle with shame around those desires. Dark Moon Lilith is the most elusive of the three. If asteroid Lilith is the body and Black Moon Lilith is the shadow, Dark Moon Lilith is the spirit. It represents internal exile, the haunting quality of unresolved emotional pain. Where Black Moon Lilith reveals suppressed desire, Dark Moon Lilith reveals unresolved psychic wounds. This is where the soul may feel misunderstood, abandoned, or betrayed. It is not always something we consciously recognize. Often it manifests as deep sensitivity, or an intuitive awareness of emotional undercurrents others may not notice. Some astrologers associate Dark Moon Lilith with psychic receptivity, the ability to sense emotional or spiritual energies beneath the surface. But that sensitivity often comes with a cost, the cost of feeling everything deeply. When astrologers work with Dark Moon Lilith, they look at its sign and house placement. The sign describes the emotional tone of the wound. The house describes where the haunting tends to appear in life experience. For example, a Dark Moon Lilith in a relational house may point to experiences of betrayal or rejection that shape the way someone approaches intimacy. In a creative house, it may manifest as the feeling that one's authentic expression was suppressed or misunderstood early in life. The purpose of studying this placement is not to pathologize oneself. It is to bring awareness to the places where the psyche may still be carrying unresolved echoes. Awareness does not erase pain, but it can transform the way we relate to it. For many witches and spiritually inclined astrologers, Dark Moon Lilith has another dimension. It is associated with the liminal spaces of the psyche, the threshold between the conscious and unconscious, the place where intuition, shadow work, and spiritual transformation often occur. Because it represents exile, it can also represent the return from exile, the moment when something once rejected becomes integrated again, when the parts of ourselves we feared begin to reveal their hidden wisdom. In that sense, Dark Moon Lilith is not just a wound, it is also a guide, the place where healing requires radical honesty with oneself. Astrology is not only about light, it is also about shadow. Every chart contains places of comfort and places of challenge. Dark Moon Lilith reminds us that some parts of the psyche cannot be easily categorized. They linger, they whisper, they influence behavior in subtle ways. But when we bring those places into awareness, they lose some of their power to haunt us. Instead, they become sources of insight, and sometimes sources of deep compassion for the complexity of our own lives. Dark Moon Lilith is not an easy point to study. It asks us to confront the parts of the psyche that feel most vulnerable, the places where exile, rejection, or betrayal may still echo. But astrology at its best is not about avoiding those places. It's about illuminating them. Because what is illuminated can be understood, and what is understood can eventually be integrated, even the ghosts in the chart. This work grows through word of mouth. If it's been meaningful to you, you can like, share, or subscribe. That's how it reaches the ones who need it.